Hey everyone, it's Petticoat from Daydream Nation, and I've got Bicyclelegs back in the seat. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, doing well, doing well.
Fantastic. We're going to do something a little bit different today. We are going to talk about a new release from a band called the Lemon Twigs and Everything Harmony. So this came out, I think, about 2 months ago, Bicyclelegs,
Yeah, 2 or 3
and
months ago. Yeah.
and it's been getting a lot of publicity. They are coming out to Australia to do a tour in October. They're part of the Harvest Festival. And I thought it would be a good opportunity to, bump a little bit of new music and do a kind of a record review. So, Daniel, what was your first impressions of the band Lemon Twigs before listening to this album? Did you have any sort of interactions with this band?
Yeah. I've been listening to them from the get-go, right from their first album. Um, and this album's a bit of a departure, I thought, because their first few albums have been very sort of bright, summery, very pop, I mean, very 60s influenced, as is this album. But they've definitely gone in a different direction for this one. But they've kind of done that with all of their albums. Like their first album was just really bright, rainbow psychedelic colors. Um, their second album is basically a musical about a monkey who goes to school. And it features Todd Rundgren as one of the singers on it. It's a wonderful album, definitely worth checking out. Their third album, um, probably more similar to the first one, I think, although they're definitely trying out a few different things. But then this one, I really think we'll get into it in detail as we go through the album, but I definitely think they're going in quite a different direction on this album.
Absolutely. Well, I read a review. I think it was the local critic Bernard Zool did a review on songs for the general public. And I think in his review, he cited an influence, the band Supertramp. And anytime I see the word Supertramp in a review of a band that I'm not really familiar, I gravitate to it because I love Supertramp.
Yeah, great
So
band.
loved it. It was like a piece of early 70s AM confectionery pop, and you could see there was a lot of Supertramp. I saw the videos, they're a hoot, they're all glammed up, and it looks like circa 1973. There's a little bit of a Ziggy Stardust, Bowie glam feel to it. So, loved that album. But of course, I had to gravitate and buy this album on the basis of songs for the general public being such a strong album. And I have to look, I'll say from the get-go, I love this album. It's just wonderful. And it really sort of, they cite every multiple influences, don't they, Bicycle Legs?
Yeah,
There's just so many. I can rattle a few and we could just take it in turns. Like, for
mm,
example, Bee Gees, Odessa album,
absolutely.
Todd Rundgren, a little
Mm,
bit of XTC, a little bit of earlier Elton John, a little bit of Carpenters, a little bit of
yeah,
Beach Boys, Brian Wilson. You got some
yeah.
others?
Oh, Sergeant Pepper or White Album era Beatles is, one that
Simon
came
and
immediately to.
Garfunkel,
Definitely. That was
Cat
another one that
Steve,
I had on my list. Yeah.
Cat Stevens, any singer songwriter. It's different, this album, because the quieter moments are actually very much quieter moments. There's a little bit less bombast, but when they do throw the bombast, it's got everything but the kitchen sink, and hence probably your reference to the Sergeant Pepper's um, reference
Yeah,
just then. So why don't we spotlight some songs, and that may be a way that we just sort of get into the guts of this album.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, a couple of my favorites on the album are In My Head, which is really beautiful. I mean, the first song is When Winter Comes Around. And as the title suggests, it's quite sort of wintry and that sort of thing. And then you get the next song, In My Head, which is very summery. So it's a really nice contrast between the two songs. It's got a really beautiful feel to it. And the other thing I like about it, me being me, is there's some lovely tricky time signature things in this song. There's some almost proggy bits in this song, which I really, really love.
Yep.
Um, I mean, it's a great song. The next song, though, Corner of My Eye, the first note I wrote on this song when I was taking notes on it last night was just, how gorgeous is this? And I
Yeah.
mean, there really isn't much more to say about that song. The falsetto vocals on this song are absolutely mesmerizing.
Fantastic. I'll stop you there because I'll
Mm,
go back and retort the three. So maybe we can
yeah.
do that. We just go down the list and
Yep.
just do three. When winter comes around, 60 Sunshine Pop. And at the 3 minute, what I like at the 3 minute mark, it absolutely soars where you have this quadruple, quintuple vocal tracking. And it's got the best bits of the Bee Gees, Supertramp, Wings, earlier Elton John. Lyrically, it's very dark. It's about how
Mm,
grief can consume somebody and how things can be forgotten. There's a lot of darkness in this album. So you may be listening to all this sweet sunshine jangly pop, but you scrape the surface and there's a little bit of darkness and it's very emotional. So great opening track. In my head, when you just said the words in my head, the chorus just got in my head. So thank you,
mm,
Bicyclelegs. This is about a protagonist that imagines that he wants to be somebody else. Again, there's sadness. It's about somebody who's afraid to be, afraid to be alone, but it has that sort of feel of XTC. I also remember the artist Gilbert O'Sullivan?
yes.
Alone Again, naturally, had that sort of
Mm,
feel. Sunny, jangly guitar lines with harmonies, and then Corner of My Eye. I just put two words, falsetto, beautiful. And it's got
mm,
that wonderful quadruple tracking. So
yeah.
um reading some online reviews, and I'm reading some of the major press like The Guardian, Rolling Stone, the only seems to be the minor gripe on this album is it's wonderful, the songs are great, but they needed a producer because it is self-produced. What's your views on that?
No, I disagree fully. I think this album sounds just absolutely brilliant.
It's not
I don't
shabby
think
for a self-produced effort, isn't it?
I don't think a producer would have added anything, and I think they quite uh, conceivably could have detracted quite a bit from it.
Yeah.
So I think they went the right way by self-producing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's nice separation. It doesn't sound cluttered. There's no sound bleed, and it's not mid or toppy. It's just right at the right level. And I think it's a really good effort for what is their fourth or fifth album to be
Yeah, absolutely.
self-produced.
But I said to you offline last night, that I would metaphorically, not literally, obviously, but I would metaphorically kill a man to get a surround sound mix of this album because it just sounds so beautiful. Just
Yeah.
the idea of having it in 5.1, surrounding you. I love surround sound music. So this would sound so good in surround sound.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Okay, all right. What's the
Yeah.
next couple of songs that you'd like to spotlight?
Yeah, well, I mean, if we're just going through it track by track, I mean, the next song is Any Time of Day. I'm going to say, you pointed out with the lyrics, it is an ongoing theme throughout this album that a lot of the lyrics are quite, the word I would use is angsty. The Daddario brothers are in their early 20s now. So they're still very young. I get a lot of almost teenage angst in this album. There's the angst about relationship, angst about where your life is heading, and all that sort of thing. The sort of things that you do sort of meditate on when you're a young, sort of late teens, early 20s sort of person. And that I've got to admit, in my 50s, I'm not immune to doing from time to time myself. So, again, this song, more beautiful falsetto. This one was one that I noted having sort of that early Bee Gees feel to it. You know, I've said this before on your channel when we did one of our, I think it was our $20 album show. Um, you know, I'm unapologetically a fan of that sort of pre-disco Bee Gees stuff. Absolutely love it.
Mm,
And the other thing about this album in general too is this band wears its influences on its sleeve, but it transcends those influences too. It's not just like, it's very easy when you use as many sort of 60s and early 70s influences like a band like this does, to almost sound like a pastiche of that music.
Yeah, they
And
make it their own.
exactly, they
Yeah.
transcend their influences and do sort of make it into something of their own, I think.
Yeah.
And then the next song is What You Were Doing. And I said this is an insanely tuneful sort of mid-tempo rocker. And it's something that I'll come back to too, is how well this album is sequenced. Because just as things are starting to get a bit down and a bit down musically, they throw in this mid-tempo rocker that's much more bright. I mean, the lyrics are still sort of angsty and that sort of thing, but the music is much more sort of happy and up-tempo. And it's exactly what the album needed at this point. So, yeah, I'll throw it back to you for the next couple.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll throw an interesting angle. These lads have background in Broadway. So they were actually child proteges. They've been in a lot of Broadway shows. Look it up. Look at their biography. I think they've got picked up a lot of the pacing tips from their experience in Broadway shows. You know, a good show has good pacing. You know when to throw the slow numbers in, you know when to have the mid-pace numbers. And I think they pick up a lot of that skill from their past experience. These guys come to this fourth or fifth album with extreme pedigree. They're not sort of ones that have learned their craft. I think that they've, straight off the bat, they've got musical game. And
absolutely,
it's certainly, it just comes out in spades. Just going back to Any Time of the Day, I had a little bit of a country feel to it, whether it's some of the instrumental passages. And again, the angst lyrics, just quoting some, they say that people pass away to make a space for all the young ones, laughing, live for today. Along a golden coast of sunshine dancing, close to someone they're romancing. Deep, very deep. What You Were Doing, I wrote Big Star and Teenage Fan Club. So it's got that jangle pop feel to it. Hooky guitar bass lines, you know, that bubbling bass lines. It's got, what I like, there's these harmonies and you put the headphones and it's sort of like these waves of harmonies. Like the first one's coming at you and then there's another one coming from the other side of the speaker, wave upon wave. These guys, I mean, it's self-produced. They're quite astute and they know what they're doing. They're putting a collage, but it works.
Yeah.
What I like about that song is it has a really nice outro. It's stripped back and it's just the guitar, drums, and bass. So again, they have a great sense of not only putting the bombast and putting out all the tricks, but they have a nice sense of light and shade and when to pull it back. And how to finish a song. So
absolutely. And you know, speaking of that, that leads perfectly into the last two songs on side one, I think, because they are two kind of stripped back songs. You've got I Don't and they're two of the saddest songs too. I mean, just the titles. I Don't Belong to Me, you know. And then I mean, it's a lovely piano ballad. It's got that relentless snare beat to it, though, you know, that just keeps it going on. But it's very, you know, because it's a piano ballad, you get that sort of Elton John kind of feel to it. It's also got French horn on it, and I'm an absolute sucker for French horn.
Yep.
It's on a couple of the other tracks too, but I just absolutely love French horn. It's just got a beautiful, you know, warm but almost slightly sad sound to it, kind of like cello, you know. I think those two instruments both give you that sort of mournful kind of quality. And then, speaking of mournful, you get the song Every Day is the Worst Day of My Life. And I mean, just that title sums it up, doesn't it? But musically, this wouldn't sound out of place on a like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young album. You know, it's got that, you know, acoustic guitar. It's got a beautiful lead vocal, and then the harmonies come in. You know, I can imagine CSN and Y, doing this song and doing it beautifully. So yeah, I mean, what a way to close out side one.
Yeah, well, I'll pick that up. Thank you. I Don't Belong to Me. I wrote down Paul McCartney at his finest. I can imagine that, got that tonality, just him and the piano stripped bare. It's quiet, it's melancholy, and it's introspective. And every day is the worst day of my life. People don't realize that's the lyric. They say it again and again, and you're listening to it, and the music consumes the lyric. And after a while, you don't kind of realize they're just repeating like a mantra. It becomes part of the whole fabric of the song. So it's not annoying that there's only just one lyric, one line.
And I mean, and the other thing too is that when they're singing that lyric, they play a little bit with time signatures. So it's not just a straight 4/4. They'll throw in an extra 2/4 bar or a 3/4 bar just to make it, and it keeps it interesting.
Absolutely. And I love, with the overdubbing of the sort of the harmonies, I love how they do rounds. The old, when you used to do rounds at school in the choir, they're bringing out all the tricks. And it just works wonderfully.
I remember doing them at primary school on recorders.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to remember that. I did that too. Anyway, no, great finisher. All right.
Yeah.
What happens to a heart?
Yeah, on side 2, it starts off with something that to me sounds very Sergeant Pepper. The whole arrangement, the string arrangement on it is just fantastic. And I have a feeling, if I remember correctly, I'd have to go and check the notes, but they do the arrangements themselves. It's a wonderful opening track. It's really got, again, doing that sort of Sergeant Pepper kind of sound, you can sound very pastiche, like almost like but they pull it off well. In fact, I think the last time I heard a very Sergeant Peppery song that sounded like the band's own at the same time and didn't just sound like a Beatles pastiche was Sowing the Seeds of Love by Tears for Fears. So, I think it's a great song. And then you get Still It's Not Enough, which is another folky one. I love the organ on this song, and again, a wonderful string arrangement. And again, a really heart-tugging lyric. It's like, whatever I do, still it's not enough. It's again, very sort of young person angsty song. But again, as a 50-year-old or 52-year-old, I can still relate to that.
Yeah, like we still is not enough. It's sometimes what us oldies think are kind of small, trivial things are just the most important things to youth. And it's got messages that are just sort of transcend any age barrier. It's just universal themes. And I know I'm going backwards in the song list, but I just think that just is powerful. It packs a punch. Going back to the song prior to that, Every Day is the Word. Oh, sorry. What Happens to a Heart? I actually saw an interview. I think it was either Brian or Michael. They're in a cafe. It was a YouTube interview, 30 minutes, just talking about the making of this album. And they said that they learned to arrange strings by listening to the Odessa album by Bee Gees. So Bee Gees are a huge influence. So that track, I think, it sort of amplifies that.
Yeah. And of course, that early Bee Gees in itself was very Beatles influence. So you can hear the through line, from the Beatles to the Bee Gees to what the Lemon Twigs are doing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Look, I concur with you, folks. Listen to early Bee Gees. It gets criminally ignored. People just think of the white suits and the disco era. I love that era. Don't get me wrong. That was groundbreaking. But that early Bee Gees is just divine, and you've got to check it out.
Speaking of early Bee Gees, Born to Be Lonely, to me, has that early Bee Gees vibe to it as well. And it's really well pulled off. And again, a song that really, really tugs at the heartstrings. It's a really beautiful song. And then you get into Ghost Run Free, which again, just when things are starting to get a bit like we need a pickup, you get the pickup in this
Yeah.
song, which is a really great up-tempo pop song, Um, you know, and this one, the harmonies, I was getting a Simon and Garfunkel vibe off the harmonies on this one. And
Yeah.
that's really, really hard to pull off. You've got to be very, very talented vocally to be reminiscent of Simon and Garfunkel, because I think they were two of the greatest harmony singers that the planet has ever seen. So,
Oh, yes, they were. I mean, I think everyone on the world, planet Earth, except Reed Little, loves Simon and Garfunkel. Hi, Reed. Uh, don't worry, I'll edit that out. Born to be Lonely. I'm going in an opposite direction because you say Bee Gees, I say Beatles.
mm,
I said Paul McCartney. Again, it sounded like
yeah,
that Paul McCartney when it's stripped back. Highlight of the song for me is when it swells into that mandolin overdub where you've got the swirling mandolins. I think they are mandolins.
yes,
But it's wonderful. It's an emotional crescendo. A lot of these songs have just a wonderful crash band wallop emotional crescendo at the end of the song, and you just swept away. Um, Ghost Run Free, it's just jangly, it's sunshine pop, and it's got those wonderful harmonies. I put down, and maybe I'm a little bit of an outright, I put down Cure Wish, the Cure Wish era.
mm,
You know, it's not too far out of that ballpark. Anyway,
yeah. I mean, the Cure were doing some very jangly kind of things on that album. So, yeah, I mean, that's
Friday
and
I'm in Love and all that sort of thing.
yeah, exactly. But then again, that early Bee Gees and the Beatles, there's, as I said, there's a through line between that, because
Crossover.
that sort of Sergeant
Yeah.
Pepper White Album Beatles influenced the Bee Gees like hell, and then the Bee Gees are influencing bands like Lemon Twigs. So there's definitely a through line. So there's no right or wrong answer there, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
then
All
you
right.
get the title track, Everything Harmony. And, this would fit on an XTC album like Mama or None Such, which are two of my favorite XTC albums. Um, you know, really, really gorgeous arrangements that XTC were famous for. I think you get on this song. And also the lyric where he keeps singing, I am trying. That reminded me of like REM. It had that, the song Orange Crush, the fire,
Mm,
that I am trying bit, reminiscent of that to me anyway. Um, so it's a really it's a great song.
yeah,
It's just wonderful. And then the album closes out with the song New to Me, which is a beautiful way to end the album, because it actually ends lyrically with maybe just a glimmer of hope after what has been a very uh, sort of dark, introspective album. There's
mm,
kind of this glimmer of maybe things are going to be all right.
yeah,
Like the singer's gotten into a new sort of relationship. This one, as much as any of the songs on this album, have that sort of late 60s Beach Boys vibe in the harmonies and that sort of thing.
mm,
um but yeah, I mean, just achingly gorgeous way to end the album, as far as I'm concerned.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree. Like, everything harmony. I wrote down Carpenters, so I'm going to reference
Mm,
Carpenters because there's a little bit of that. Because when their finest work has that wonderful, gorgeous harmony. It's just like treacle, but sweet, not just sickly, but just
mm,
sweet. The beautiful counterpoint between the piano and the voice, and then those string stabs. It reminded me of the Eleanor Rigby. Sorry,
yeah,
just coming back to a classic song, but those that really classic pop feel to it, and how it follows the melodies. I wrote down a little note. What would George Martin have done with this band? Anyway, question mark.
mm,
I'm not sure, but I reckon he would have had a ball, because I think these guys are just so wonderfully creative, musically curious. And I mean, this is a self-produced album, and I'm not saying anything wrong, is wrong with the sound of it, but someone like a George Martin, it'd be interesting to see what he would have done. New to me, Great album closer, 3 minutes and 58 seconds of bliss. It's got those wonderful layered harmonies. And I actually throw another one into the mix that we haven't mentioned, Everly Brothers.
Mm.
Also Simon and Garfunkel and Beach Boys, Brian Wilson, who the band has cited as a major influence, and it's just a wonderful album closer.
Yeah.
So I love this album.
Yeah. It's a 10 out of 10 for me.
I think it's one of the albums of the year. And I think it's a nice album cover, how they're both on the same platform.
Yes.
Showing togetherness. Because, you know, the expectation if you're doing a photo shoot, maybe you'd see one brother on one end and one on the other.
Yeah.
Possibly if it was the Everly Brothers or those, you know, Simon Garfunkel, because, you know, it was a little bit of a facade that they were close because they were warring. But to these brothers seem really close, musically intertwined. I'm not sure what the relationship side of it is, but it just seems that they are totally in synergy. Any closing words that you'd like to add to this album?
Just as I say, this is a 10 out of 10 album for me. It's a perfect pop album as far as I'm concerned. It's just, as I've already said, achingly gorgeous, this album. You know, you mentioned George Martin. George Martin, one of the great things that made him a great producer is that he knew when to do something, and he also knew when to let the band have their head. And I think he would have been like that with this band too. When they had an idea, he would have let them run with it. And then just added a little suggestion here or there rather than trying to sort of really overproduce them. But this is my favorite Lemon Twigs album so far. There's been 4 albums and an EP, and to me, this is the best work they've done yet. To get the idea that these guys are still in their early to mid 20s, you know, I think they're like 22 and 24 or something like that. To see how talented they are is just at sort of same time, it's astonishing and also a little bit sickening, because I wish I was talented like that when I wish I was talented like that now, let alone when I was in my 20s.
Well, you know, one thing's for sure, they've put down a document of something that is artistically brave, musically curious, and it's a joy to listen to. I'd give it a 9, but, you know, I could always change my opinion. And some of my favorite albums this year, I did a review on the channel for a band called Beach Fossils with Bunny, are on that jangly sunshine pop. So it seems like some of the best art or the best music that's coming out at the moment is in that sort of genre. And this is certainly, yeah, it's right up. It's a great album. So heartily recommend it. All right. Thank you, Bicyclelegs. Please check out Bicyclelegs channel. Lots of content. Please like and subscribe to this little channel, Rock Daydream Nation. Tell us what you think of the album or the Lemon Twigs in general. Please like and subscribe. The one thing's for sure, me and Bicyclelegs will do a show on this channel very soon. See you later.
Bye.